We're here with Holly Pattenden, lead advisor to Equinor UK. Now, Holly, we've been talking about natural resources and ESG within natural resources, and you sat on a panel earlier on. Do you have any key takeaways from that panel session?
I suppose the main takeaway is that there's no one solution to solving the energy challenge and to driving the energy transition forward. We need to do as many different things as we can because it's, as many people have mentioned today, it's not a journey from A to B, it's a systemic transformation. So we're working on several fronts to try and achieve the goals of the energy transition, which for Equinor means net zero by 2050. And that starts with our oil and gas business, where we're focusing on those emissions over which we have agency, first of all. So that means electrifying our oil and gas platforms off Norway. Then we're looking at investing in renewables at scale and speed, which for us mainly means offshore wind. And we have a significant offshore wind business here in the UK with the first ever floating offshore wind turbine at Hywind, Scotland, and the largest offshore wind farm in the world at Dogger Bank, where we've recently started producing power. And one spin of our turbine at Dogger Bank can provide enough power for a UK home over 2 days. So, and then we're also looking into low carbon solutions, which is carbon capture and storage and hydrogen. And all of these will play a major part in trying to get towards a net zero world by 2050, which is the goal that we all share.
Yeah, so talking about the carbon capture storage perhaps to start with, so this is something where the technology's been around for a while, but perhaps people have been a bit slow on the uptake, or perhaps really leaning into that technology and making it more efficient, more effective. What are your thoughts with regards to carbon capture storage? Because it's a little bit emotive.
Yeah, so we've been doing carbon capture and storage in Norway since 1996. But that's been mainly in terms of being able to boost oil production. And I think there has been a role around the world for small-scale carbon capture and storage applications for that reason, for enhanced oil recovery. The difficulty is that a lot of people see it as essentially a waste management business. So where's the commercial rationale for doing it? And the commercial business models are still being worked out. And to really make it fly, you need to have a proper price on carbon. And that's the challenge because different regimes around the world have different carbon prices. So how do we bring the world together to set a proper price on carbon and to address this economic externality in a proper way? But we're taking a lot of risk in terms of building up new carbon capture and storage business models and spending a lot of money in it. We have great plans to invest in it in the UK as part of the East Coast Cluster, which is a big carbon store offshore, which we hope to link up to the major industrial clusters in Teesside and the Humber, and have ambitions to store millions of tons of carbon offshore there. So it's going to be a major part of the energy transition. All of the major scenarios for getting to net zero by 2050 say that we need carbon capture at scale. So we're investing in it along with lots of partners, and we think that the future is promising, but it's going to take a bit of time to work out the commercial aspects of it.
Okay, so commercial aspects perhaps yet to be settled with regards to those areas. Now, something that people have been talking about today is not just oil and gas and the world of energy, but the role of minerals and materials that go into that, and that role of mining. And this is something where, of course, everyone talks about electric vehicles and batteries, but you mentioned hydrogen. And so hydrogen, of course, requires the likes of platinum, palladium, etc., of which many of the companies here are experts in. Hydrogen is expensive. The technology perhaps is getting more and more proven at the moment. Where do you think hydrogen will really play a role, say, within the UK?
Well, we've recently had, just last week I think, a report by the National Infrastructure Commission, which said that it doesn't really see much of a role for hydrogen in home heating in the UK, which had previously been an area where people thought hydrogen would be able to replace natural gas. And heating is a huge part of the UK's carbon emissions base. Hydrogen for vehicles is another area that people have been talking a lot about. I think there will be a major role for hydrogen, certainly in very heavy vehicles where electricity doesn't necessarily work because the batteries are too large. But I think the real role for hydrogen is going to be in industrial decarbonisation. So going to these large areas which have steelworks, cement factories, ceramics, a lot of these industries that use a large amount of fossil fuels to generate the heat that they require to operate. There we can use hydrogen to replace fossil fuels in those business processes. I think there are two ways to make hydrogen. One is through splitting natural gas, and the other is through splitting water. The first, blue hydrogen, is certainly where we've been focusing. Equinor provides about 30% of the UK's gas via pipeline from Norway. We would really like to be able to decarbonise that gas and to work with partners in the customer areas to help them decarbonise as well. So we see hydrogen playing a major role there. And we also have long-term ambitions to produce green hydrogen. So with our Dogger Bank wind farm, there's a potential new phase of that where we could tie that into the Humber and produce green hydrogen there and start to build up that side of the economy as well. So I think hydrogen is definitely going to be an important part of the future.
Yeah, well, as you said, we need lots of different options on the table to be able to work out, well, what's needed within that ecosystem as a whole. So perhaps final question to yourself around the just energy transition. We've heard people talking about it here today. It means different things to different people. What does the just energy transition mean to yourself?
Well, I think one of the most important things when we talk about the just transition, certainly in the UK, is that we don't want to make the same mistakes that were made when the coal industry was phased out, where we created generations of worklessness in some industrial areas and generations of deprivation. So it's really important for the just transition to make sure that the 200,000 workers in the offshore energy industry at the moment can have a future where they can have high quality, clean energy jobs. So for us, that means making sure that, that those people will be able to go on this transition. So there are various initiatives like the Skills Passport, where we're looking at skills in the oil and gas sector that can then be transferred to the renewable industry. And actually at Dogger Bank, our wind farm, we've got some wind turbine technicians whose grandparents were coal miners and who are now working out there on our offshore wind turbines. And that's a great story of a just transition across generations in industrial areas in the UK.
Brilliant. So with that, thank you very much, Holly. See you around.